Hey, welcome back to another episode of Keep Standing. I'm so grateful to have you sharing with us on today. Now, before we get started, I just want to encourage you, if you have not yet liked this content, please do us a big favor. Like, subscribe, and share this podcast with others, especially if it's been a blessing to you. Let's make sure that we help share it with others who might find some benefit from what we're discussing. I think today is going to be a real important conversation for you, and I hope that it really lands squarely in the place where you need it. Today, we're talking about something that every leader, regardless of your title, context, no matter where you serve or how you serve, this is something that you got to get right, and it's relationships. Because you can be brilliant at strategy. You can have the precision that hits the perfect target. You can build incredible systems. You can be one of the greatest visionaries of your time. You can have the ability to articulate the sharpest desires of where you're going to your audience. But if you neglect relationships, ultimately, you're going to find yourself leading a lonely, hollow organization. And even more importantly, life. Leadership at the heart is relational. It's not just simply, what you say or what you're able to construct. It's how you relate. And it doesn't mean it always has to be perfect. It's not, never going to be. But the best leaders don't just lead teams. They learn how to build trust. They don't just inspire crowds. They don't just talk to thousands of people. They connect with individuals on an everyday, ordinary kind of way. That way, when relationships are really fully functional and developed, when storms come, and they will, it's not going to be just your skills that'll keep you grounded. It'll be the strength of your relationships that you've nurtured along the way. When you go through difficulty, it really does build a sense of confidence. When you've gone through something with someone, that's how you develop the trust that the next little challenge won't be as difficult. Doesn't mean that you're going to lessen them. They're going to still come. You just get so much better at how you handle them. And you have trust in the individuals you're connected to when you do face them. Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. We need each other. It helps us grow and develop. So let's go ahead today. Let's dig in to what it looks like personally, professionally, and parentally. Let's talk about relationships that matter and where it matters most at a personal level. Now, one of the hardest parts of leadership, especially in the capacity that I serve in as a pastor, is managing the weight of relationships that to be honest, sometimes can feel real transactional. I know I'm not the only one who feels this, that there are always those seasons where you kind of struggle with superficial connections. There have been times in my own personal life where I've had to ask myself, now, what is it that they really want from me? Do they really see me, or is it my platform that they're kind of invested in? And then when you're in a public position, you're always beginning to wonder, why are they calling? What do they necessarily want from me? Why me? Are they here for me, or is it what I can do for them? And that's not just in my own capacity. Many of us feel that quite often in a lot of our relationships. There's always going to be kind of this internal questioning that really has the possibility of pushing you to isolate yourself. You start getting your own self cocooned in a corner, trying to protect yourself. You're really trying to kind of keep from letting too many people come in and cause some type of harm to spaces that you're not fully ready to reveal. So you start isolating. You got to be careful of that, because that in and of itself can be so detrimental. Maybe sometimes there are going to be times when people want to be transactional with you, but the challenge is not for you to shape their way of seeing it. The issue is how you feel about being authentic in the moment. It's process, it's a journey, and it takes time. I've been in seasons where people are often asked me lately, especially when they look at some of the things that have happened, and they start seeing, where we are now congregationally. Where we are now is not where we started. We really started at the bottom. And when I came, we had just a few people in our congregation. We've grown significantly, and God knows I'm grateful. But there are times now in this season of life where I may have younger leaders in a number of different sectors of society ask me that with all the success you've had, is there something that you really grieve, or what do you grieve the most? And for me, when I get that question, that's always real easy. It's not knowing people as personally as I once did. When we were just a couple of people, a few hundred people, maybe just a few, it was easy for me to be able to know the members, to know their names, to know birthdays. I could keep track of some of the major life events with real ease. I knew when they got promotions. I was able to remember a challenge that they told me a few weeks ago, a few months ago. But now, with the growth of our congregation and with the expansion of influence, I really do kind of grieve the loss of that closeness. I don't know as many names, unfortunately. I don't get to be as personal as I once was. And I'd love to, but there is an adjustment that comes with exposure. And so then I haven't surrendered, though, to that loss. I'm still fighting against it. You just kind of got to learn some new tools, how to be intentional. So I do. I make it a point to hang around after worship a little longer than I used to. I have to do different things. I have to take some walks internally in the midst of our congregational gatherings. I have to take time to show up unexpectedly at ministry events. I have to take some time to even show up in the community for games, for outings, graduations, school board meetings, and anything else where my presence can make a difference. There's got to be this intentional effort. Why? Because relationships that matter don't happen by default. They happen by decision. You decide, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it, because the goal is to deepen the relationships, that they are what matter. And that's what's going to help to strengthen the trust and to create a firmer way of growing together. In my book, Stand, I talk about how conflict, again, is not something you should run from. It's something actually you ought to learn how to lean into and embrace, even because it reveals character. Whether you like it or not, it's going to reveal the quality of your relationships. Again, you're not always going to get everything right, and you don't have to live with that kind of pressure. But when you do go through it, it's going to pull the covers off of your personal ambition and motivation. And it's also going to help you and others to see how much work you've actually put into developing relationships. The ones that last are going to be the ones that are built not on simple gimmicks or ploys. They're going to be built on presence, prayer, and patience. If you're going to be a good leader, and if you're going to lead effectively, you're going to have to learn how to listen and how to be present in order to receive from others. I often remember the words of the late Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So don't always put that pressure on you to say everything right, to get everything perfect. You're not. But people aren't going to remember it anyways. What they'll remember is the authentic you that showed up, was available and present. So show up, not for what you can get, but for what you can become together. Relationships that matter in the workplace. Let's talk about it. Corporate culture will have you chasing results if you let it. You'll always find yourself trying to fight for the next promotion, to get the next advantage so that you can move your way up the ladder. Corporate culture can find you just simply engaging in actions just strictly for what benefit it provides for you. If you let it, it'll whisper that your value is in your performance, not your presence. That's not true. Now, you do have to make sure that you commit to your effort in your performance, and you've got to work hard, and you've got to offer some ambition to what you're doing. But I've come to discover that the truth is that what's really, really meaningful in your work is the fact that you're willing to be who you are, your true self. Authenticity is extremely attractive. Not the person that you're trying to cause somebody to see you as, but it's the real you who can be that person in public and private. I spent years trying to compete, quietly just kind of comparing myself, and we've all done it, subtly just, trying to adjust to meet expectations, thinking that if I do this way, maybe they'll like me more, maybe they'll be more responsive. But what I found out is that the most impactful relationships in my career, they weren't the ones where I impressed someone. They were the ones where I was willing to be real with them, where I was willing to be authentic. I've learned that to lead with authenticity, not with ego, can make you a much better leader than you ever imagined. That's why I've learned to be okay with saying, you know what, I don't know. If you want me to give you some expert analysis, I may not be the best person. And it's okay to say, I don't know. And even better at saying to other people in interactions, so tell me, how are you really doing? When I led a team through a major restructure, I realized quickly that leadership is not just about clarity or competence. It's about connection. It's about how you engage with people and how you work to develop strong relationships that are meaningful and lasting. One of the best pieces of advice that I ever received was don't manage people's output. Learn how to steward their trust. Learn how to let them know that you don't take them for granted. You're not going to mishandle some of the things that they're willing to trust you with. Access to their personal lives, their private seasons and situations, their relationships, and their struggles. No matter what arena you're working in. That is extremely beneficial to your development as a leader and to what you're building or growing. That'll long outlive you, and it'll last much longer than you. People don't need perfect leaders. They need honest ones. People don't need charisma. They need character. Yeah, get it right. Spend some time working on what you need to say. But in the end, make sure who you are far outweighs what it is you're trying to convey. My grandmother used to always say to me that you can work real good at a speech and it never really have an impact, because there are going to be times where I can't hear what you're saying for seeing what you're doing. Work on authenticity. If you want to build relationships that matter at work, be consistent. Show up. Show up when you say you're going to show up. Be there when you're supposed to be. Be consistent in your effort. Don't give all out effort for a spurt and then disappear for a period of time. Find some level of consistency in the way in which you engage and the way in which you work. Be curious. Delve deeper. Dig deeper. Ask questions that matter, that are meaningful. Talk about some of the things that you might see hiding out in the shadows. Because if you do ask the right questions, you do offer a level of curiosity, you're going to stumble upon a real important piece of the puzzle that you desperately need. And be courageous enough to lead with your whole self, not just the public self. Go ahead and bring that private self with you. Lead with who you are, flaws and all. I mean, even those pieces that you really try hard to keep people from hearing about. Because in the end, no matter how hard you try, it's going to show up. In some way, some manner, it'll show up. Stop chasing competition. I hope that we learn this one. I hope that we stop always trying to compare ourselves with others, trying to compete. Start choosing authenticity. I promise you, it'll last and it'll make a big difference. Well, here's the last one. This one is real sacred to me. It's parenting. I talked about this in the past, but I've learned that the most powerful gift that I can give my children isn't money or opportunity. And even though I do try and make sure that I'm a provisional parent and offering them those things, what really matters the most is presence. And sometimes it can be a big burden. It can be difficult internally, especially when you're facing some challenges about being present. Let me be honest. I learned this aspect, this trait from my mother. She was a single parent. She had a demanding work schedule. All the resources we had came from what she was able to acquire. She didn't make a whole lot of money, but she did have resources accessible. And she did the best with what she had. Somehow, even with her schedule, even with the challenges that we were facing, I always remember that she just kept showing up. It's one of the most important pieces of my childhood and our relationship. I remember I played every sport that there was. Football, and after football season, I rolled into basketball season. After basketball season, soccer season. After soccer season, it was something else. There was always something going on. There was always a need for her to run me to something. And I remember, looking into the stands at one of my games and searching for her. And I remember one day I wasn't having that particularly good of a game, but I kept looking up into the stands. And finally I look up and there she is. When I saw her, it changed everything. Because I could work on my mechanics. I could try and do what was right. But that little piece of confidence that came from her presence, man, that made all the difference. And it wasn't just simply her showing up. What really made it so meaningful was knowing what it cost her to be there. The sacrifice that she had to make, the leaving early from work, the chance that she had to take just to get there, knowing how important it was to me. That's what built the trust. That's what taught me that love is presence. Now, as a father myself, I try hard to live out that same consistency, to model what it was that I know made a huge difference in my life. In fact, lately, I saw it kind of really being exemplified in a decision I had to make. There was a Wednesday that I had to make some challenging meetings. I had to be engaged in back-to-back conversations. And I had preached that week. I preached twice. I'd been traveling. And I was drained. But my son had an orchestra concert. He's gotten into orchestra. He plays the viola. And he told me early that morning that he had a concert, but he says, "Dad, you don't really have to be there. I know you got a lot of stuff going." And so he didn't say a whole lot about it. I think he didn't want to put a whole lot of pressure on me, but something said, whatever you got to do it so that you can be there. So he's getting ready to sit down and they're preparing to start, and he's getting ready for his particular part in the concert. And when I walked into the gymnasium and saw his eyes light up because he saw me, it meant the world to me. He didn't have an expectation of me being there because he knew I had a lot of meetings. He knew Dad had a lot going on. He was giving me just a little grace. But then knowing I made the effort to be there meant the world to him. I think it was the fact that I showed up. That's what made all the difference. And when you can see it on your children's face, it really, really does, carry a whole lot more weight than you could ever imagine. It's better than any accolade you could receive from someone. That day reminded me that leadership at home isn't always loud. It doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it's just those soft whispers. Can you be here? Can you be present? Parents, your presence, especially when it costs you something, becomes a defining memory for your children. They remember that, and they'll draw from it for years to come. Not because it was perfect, not because everything worked exactly the way they had drawn it out or the way you had drawn it out, but because it was a real, honest, sacrificial moment. If you're a parent and you're listening, hear me when I say this. Your kids may not remember always what you said, but they will remember that you were there. So whether you're leading in personal relationships, the boardroom, or even your own living room, relationships that really matter are the ones that stand the test of time. They're the ones that you work on, that you give the effort to grow and strengthen. They're the ones that you really put in the hard work to make better. It takes time, and it doesn't always look pretty, but in the end, it is so well worth the journey. Let's keep building relationships that matter. Well, I hope that this has been encouraging to you. Hope you have enjoyed this conversation. Again, do us a real big favor. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and share this with others. And we'll keep changing the world one conversation after the other. I'm grateful for you. Thanks for being a part of this. And I hope that you keep on leading, keep loving, and developing some real strong, meaningful relationships. Till next time, keep standing.